Hello, everybody. Welcome for being here for the today webinar under the name of Exploring Environmental Communication Insights into Voluntary Labeling. First of all, here's Martina speaking from the Italian Marketing Department, and I'll give the scene in a while to Silvano and Matteo, the speaker of the today webinar. First of all, as I said, tell me if you hear me. Please write in the chat so we can check if there are any type of technical issues. And you can use the chat also for your question. We'll collect them during the webinar, and at the end of the presentation, we'll give you answer as soon as we can. I'm seeing some people writing they can hear me, so perfect. Well, hello guys, hello Matteo and Silvano.
Hello.
Good morning.
Okay, now it's your time, so I will switch my camera off and have a good webinar to you all.
Thank you, Martina.
Thank you, Martina, and welcome everybody to the webinar. Today we explore the voluntary environmental labeling. I'm Silvano Brambilla, Sustainable Sales Manager, and I want just to spend a few words on who we are. TUSUD is one of the world's leading experts for testing, inspection, certification, verification and validation services. Present on the market for almost 160 years as a one-stop solution provider for the attestation of conformity of products, organization, and professionals according to international standards. As a certification body accredited to several schemes, our organization is structured to be 100% independent and impartial. TUSUD headquarters is located in Munich, Germany, and our global network has over 1,000 offices located in 50 countries worldwide. With our expertise network of multidisciplinary experts, accredited laboratories and offices located in the main commercial hubs and production centers in the world, we are ready to support your safety, security, and sustainability needs, wherever you carry out your activities or export your product. I wish you a profitable webinar. See you later for question and answer time. And now I move on to our speaker, Matteo Simonetto, Sustainability Services Manager.
Thank you, Silvano. Good morning to everybody. So let's start with some background information and figures from the environmental communication. So in recent years, the awareness of environmental issues and impact of human activities has grown significantly, and environmental communication has had an important role in this. Major disasters like the Exxon Valdez oil spill, Chernobyl, Fukushima, and Australian bushfires have had significant environmental impacts on received extensive media coverage. Research by the United Nations IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and documentaries like the Al Gore's and Inconvenient Truth have also raised awareness on climate change. International policies and agreements have set new global standards and commitments for environmental protection and climate action, providing a common framework to measure and communicate about environmental performance and impact. Advances in technology and the rise of social media have further amplified environmental messages and discussions. In summary, environmental communication has played a crucial role in raising awareness and influencing governments, investors, consumers, and companies. Okay, so the increased awareness towards environmental issues has led to new market and business opportunities, but introduced also new risks and threats. Drivers of environmental sustainability are many and different, ranging from the possibility to differentiate a product to lower operating costs to the possibility of stronger relationships with the stakeholders like the investors. A market survey, for example, highlights that the two elements are perceived as strategic to executives. The possibility of increasing revenue, promoting the sustainable characteristics of products and services, as well as the possibility to comply with current regulation, sometimes assessing benefits and incentives. The increased external diffusion of environmental information implies an increased potential risk of exposure. It is therefore fundamental for organizations to adopt a proper strategy for environmental communication. For example, using information derived from consistent documents and creating objective claims and statements. Environmental labels play a strategic role in environmental communication, supporting organizations in providing evidences of what they are communicating with respect to many different environmental topics, such as energy consumption, use of renewable resources, and many more. Green claims and labels are powerful tools for the diffusion of information about the environmental performances of products and services. And I'm quite sure that many of you, at least once in a lifetime, have seen on products at the supermarkets labels with strange pictures like frogs, trees, footprints, and so on. And this is because claims can have also the form of symbols, and they can be found not only on product and packaging, but also on brochures and flyers, increasing in that way the visibility and the appeal of the product on the market. Okay, so the need for organizations to externally communicate more and more environmental information about their products has led over the time to the development of a huge number of labels with the adverse effect of generating many cases of greenwashing. Among all the different labels developed by the companies in the recent years, many of them do not comply with the principles of transparency and accuracy. Was it possible? Mainly because of the use of wrong terminology that often is too much generic, for example, environmentally friendly, green, or ozone friendly. The lack of consistent documentation to support the claim, for example, in communicating a reduction in the energy consumption, and it is necessary to sustain the calculation with objective and data like bills and invoices, for example. A missing third-party verification process to check and evaluate the consistency of the information and the compliance with the standards. And finally, the presence of multiple labels for the same topic, characterized, however, by a very different levels of transparency and consistency. So, the European Union Roadmap for Environmental Communication helps to ensure that environmental claims are credible and legally compliant. Here we can see that the three main pillars on which the European communication strategy for the coming years is based. It starts with the European Sustainability Report standards, supporting basically the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, aimed at providing a standardized reporting set of rules on the ESG topic, so not only environmental, but even social and economic, highlighting potential impacts on people and environment, as well as the derived financial risk and opportunities for the companies. The standard is aimed at helping investors, organizations, and consumers to evaluate the sustainability performance of the organizations as a part of the European Green Deal. Considering this last, the recently approved regulation on the eco-design for sustainable product regulation introduced minimum eco-design requirements for nearly all categories of physical goods placed on the European Union market, supporting the definition of a framework for a compulsory communication about the environmental sustainability of the products. This will be possible thanks to the digital product passport, covering topics like energy consumption, recycled content, recyclability, and life cycle product information. Again, this will help companies at any level of the supply chain to assess sustainability information, supporting at the same time the consumers in making more conscious choices. The third pillar of the European Union communication roadmap is then the Green Claim Directive, setting out a commitment to contrast false environmental claims and supporting the diffusion of comparable and verifiable information to reduce the risk of the greenwashing. So the Green Claim Directive, as a part of the overall European Green Deal, is aimed at creating a circular and green European Union economy by providing transparent environmental information. Companies plays an active role in the ecological transition, as they should promote a consistent and credible communication, complying with some strategic principles of the directive. Avoiding generic environmental claims like climate or carbon friendly or gentle on the environment. The prohibition of claims based on just on the offsetting of the greenhouse gases emissions, for example, carbon positive or climate compensated, since the claim must be based on LCA impact results and on consistent improvements achieved within the product value chain. This is aimed basically avoiding only buying carbon credits, promoting instead a logic of effective contribution to the emission reduction. Comparability of products, providing information about the method applied, the involved product, and the suppliers. Sustainability labels, like the type-free environmental declaration that we will see later. Claims about the future environmental performance, such as climate neutral by, for example, 2030, which has to be supported by clear, objective, and public available information about the commitment and the target plan. And finally, repairability, which concerns information on the availability of parts, estimated costs, and instruction for the repair and restrictions. Okay, so why it is important to avoid misleading environmental communication, thus greenwashing? Because of the potential risk. The practice of making false or exaggerated claims about environmental benefits of a product, service, or a brand can lead to legal and financial consequences, as well as a loss of trust among stakeholders. There's an high evidence that the sustainability information that companies to date currently report are not appropriate, generating confusion in the stakeholders, especially in investors, because of the uncertainty on whether they can trust it. The lack of a consistent overview about the environmental issues, the risk related to sustainability, and the plans implemented by the companies to reduce their impacts are all critical points. To avoid these pitfalls, it is essential to follow guidelines for making an accurate and justified claim, ensuring at the same time transparency and credibility in the organization's environmental communication. So, let's go now through the voluntary environmental labeling, understanding what it is and how it can support company in the communication. So, according to the information of the previous slides, the introduction, it is fundamental for companies understanding how they can move in the field of environmental communication and which tools are available to avoid as much as possible the greenwashing. There are three main types of voluntary environmental labels and declaration based on the international ISO standards, which can support them. Type 1 declaration based on specific multi-criteria system focuses on the whole life cycle of the product. It requires a third-party certification. Type 2 based on environmental self-declaration by companies about their products. And this kind of environmental statement is not limited to labeling, but includes also advertising, website, and so on. It doesn't require third-party verification, but it is strongly recommended to increase the reliability to the market. Finally, the type 3, based on standardized life cycle assessment, whose results must be presented in the form of an environmental declaration aimed at facilitating the comparison between products and services from companies, thanks to a well-defined and standardized rules. This last requires a third-party verification. So the type 1 label is based on the respect of specific criteria and performance limits to which products and services must comply in order to be qualified for the labeling. This means, for example, being able to ensure the compliance with, for example, a specific limit of electricity consumption during the production process, rather than the compliance with emission limits in air or water, lower than the legal ones. The benefits for companies in having this type of label are mainly due to the possibility to demonstrate credibility and trust because of the independent third-party process, which is compulsory. Moreover, it allows a sort of, let me say, market diversification, thanks to the environmental performances respecting more restrictive limits than the standard ones. Some examples of type 1 environmental labels are the European Eco-Label, the Nordic Swan adopted by the Nordic countries, like Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and others, and the Germany Blue Angels, the logos you have in this slide. They cover many different product categories and services like detergents, textiles, construction products, paper, and even services like catering services, cleaning service, and so on. Here you can see an example of the application for the eco-label for paints, in this case, with specific prefixed performance criteria to be satisfied in order to reach the final labeling. The criteria covering the life cycle stage of manufacturing and use phase. So just to give an example, these criteria are aimed on one side, for example, at minimizing the content of toxic substances and volatile organic compounds, and on the other side, at maximizing the use stage, setting, for example, a minimum spreading rate. But how it is possible to reach the final label? Following a well-defined procedure, so starting from the application of the company according to the selected label to be obtained, in this case the European Union Eco-Label. Then the verification of the submitted documentation is performed by the Eco-Label section, and this is necessary to obtain the green light for the next issuing of the certification and the license by the technical committee for using the label. Finally, the company must perform the registration of all the approved documents on the online European public database containing all the Eco-Label certified products and services. Okay, so the Type 2 label is again a voluntary label, and it is a self-declared claim used by companies that want to draw attention to a specific single environmental topic of their products and services. It is aimed to promote the environmental performances of products and services in terms of less burden on the environment, allowing consumers making informed choices. According to the reference standards, the ISO 14021, some of the main requirements of a Type 2 label are: claims must be accurate and not misleading, they must be specific for a single environmental aspect, for example, the recycled content or reduced energy consumption, and they must be explicit. The environmental topics covered by the reference ISO standards range from compostable, recovered energy, recycled content, up to reduced energy consumption and reduced resource use. even if the verification by a third party here is not necessary. So the reliability and credibility of this kind of claims can be highly variable. Type 2 labels are, however, flexible and cost-effective, avoiding often high investments in terms of time and costs. Okay, here we have an example on how to get a type 2 environmental labels. Considering the many different topics I listed within the scope of the ISO standard, the recycled content seems to be, let me say, a good example, since it is an hot topic, even because of the growing needs introduced by the European Green Deal strategy. And the verification of a recycled content claim in a product is performed by a supply chain audit, which means checking the amount of recycled material in the finished product through a chain of custody that tracks the materials from its source up to the final product. Products under the scope of the recycled content are those made, for example, of paper and paperboard, wood, textile, glass, metal, and plastic, for example. Focusing now on the type 3, this is again a voluntary environmental label based on the life cycle assessment approach, which is a methodology for the quantification of the potential environmental impacts of products, processes, or services through the whole life cycle, from the extraction and processing of raw materials up to the end of life. Environmental declaration allow companies quantifying products, LCA environmental performances in a standardized way, making possible reducing the risk of greenwashing and meeting specific requests from the market. This type of label has the form of a declaration, which is a standardized document that presents consistent information about the product's impact on the environment. So it is an excellent tool for the communication of environmental information to the stakeholders, both internal or external. Also, thanks to the compulsory third-party verification, which is necessary to register the declaration in a public accessible website, and we will see later an example. There are many different program operators managing and regulating the development and the registration of the declaration according to different rules. One of the most important one is the International EPD system, which is the first and the longest, let me say, operational program founded in 1998 in Sweden. The scope of International EPD system covers many sectors like paper and plastic products, buildings, machinery and equipment, construction products, foods, and so on. Another example of a program operator is Pepco Passport, which is very similar to the International EPD system, but focusing on a specific single sector of electric and electronic products. This program operator uses the term PEP, which means basically product environmental profile, to identify again the environmental declaration. Thus, it is exactly a type 3 label. The program operator is based in France, and like the International EPD system, it has an international vision and meets the requirements of the ISO standards. Some typical products covered by Pepco Passport are wires and cables, home automation, air conditioning, lighting, and others. So, without telling you the specific name of the companies, I'm sure that many of the products you have at home, your home, like the switch for turning on the lights, are covered by this type of label. Here you have an overview on the main steps needed to get a Type 3 environmental declaration. As I mentioned before, there are many different program operators managing this type of labels. Even if all of them are considering international recognized ISO standards, each of them has, however, developed a specific program based on specific set of instructions and rules to be followed by the companies who want to apply for this kind of communication. These rules are called PCR, so product category rules. and they specify criteria about eligible products, how to perform the quantification of impacts, and how to draft the final reports. Once identified the proper program operator with the connected suitable PCR, then it is necessary to perform first a complete lifecycle assessment of the product or service, object of the study, and then drafting the environmental declaration containing the main information derived from the lifecycle assessment. The last stage, finally, is the submission of the environmental declaration to an independent verifier who will perform an audit, confirming or not, depends, the compliance of the documents and the declaration to the PCR and the reference ISO standards, allowing in that way the final registration of the environmental declaration on the public website of the program, of the selected program operator. Here you have a summary of the main characteristics of the three types of labels. And the next question could be, why a company should choose a type of labeling over the other, and based on what criteria? I would like to be honest with you. Replying to this question may require another session, another webinar. However, it is possible to highlight some of the main key points that can drive the selection by a company. One of them is the audience. Having labels like the type 1 and the type 2, more oriented to a business, to a B2C communication rather than a B2B. Which is instead well covered by the type 3 label. Moreover, according to the environmental topic, the company that the company wants to communicate, it is possible to identify a preference, since the three different type of labels do not cover equally all the existing environmental topics. For example, in the case of the recycled content claim, the type 2 label is the best solution. The different dimensions of the organization can also affect the environmental communication strategy, mainly because of the possibility of minor or major investments in terms of resources and capitals. So, type 2 label probably is the most flexible one because the third-party verification is optional, so it allows a potential time cost saving. Type 3 label, on the contrary, could be the most expensive one because of the high structured approach, including a full lifecycle assessment and the third-party verification, with also the submission and registration fees for the program operator. So requests from the market, for example, tenders and upcoming regulation, finally, can also force the selection by the company. For example, according to the European Green Deal, the life cycle assessment that does type 3 label will be almost necessary for many products. So now we will see a practical example of a type 3 label. Okay, so as stated previously, to get an environmental declaration, it is necessary to follow a specific workflow. Independently on the final selection of the program operator, and now you have probably a clear overview on them, the process is almost the same, thus the steps here highlighted must be every time fulfilled. Here you can see some example of public available environmental declaration taken from the most important program operators. Under the aesthetical point of view, you can see that they look like quite different each other. And this is because the program operator typically can suggest a template to be used, but apart from the technical contents, the colors, the picture, and the style can often be set by the company. So considering that technical information within a declaration could be, let me say, sometimes boring, okay? This gives the opportunity to the marketing division to make environmental declaration much more appealing. just one alert from my side. So pay attention to high distortions by marketing, because I saw in the past many times environmental declaration initially made of about, let me say, 10 to 15 pages. And this is a typical value for an environmental declaration, growing up to 50 to 60 pages after the marketing boost. And this is, of course, not so reasonable. So anyway, here you have the typical approach to a type-free study. In the table, you can see the list of the main project steps, starting from the identification of the suitable PCR for the product you want to assess, thus with the selection of the proper program operator. Once having identified the specific set of rules to be applied, it is then necessary to perform the life cycle assessment, which is preliminary to the next draft of the APD. The last step is finally the third-party verification of the study, checking the supporting documents, calculation, and the final study reports. Question 1. How it is possible to identify the suitable PCR for my product? To reply to this question, it is necessary basically performing a sort of scouting among all the available program operators, basically matching the product object of the study with the different product categories covered by each program operator. As you can see here, each of them has a specific scope. So generally speaking, the international APD system includes a wider range of products from chemicals, construction products, foods, metals, and many others. APD Italy is instead more focused on construction products, electrical and electronic device, something, and packaging. Many other products categories are not covered by the APD Italy, like, for example, foods and beverages. IBU, the program operator placed in Germany, is specifically focused only on construction products, while Pepeco Passport covers only the electrical and electronic devices like wires and cables, heating and air conditioning, and many others. And what about a product suitable, for example, for more than one single program operator? And this is the case. In this case, the choice could be based on, let me say, different driving factors. For example, is the organization participating to a tender asking for the selection of a specific program operator? This happened, for example, in the past, in many tenders, for example, by Enel, which is an Italian manufacturer and distributor of electricity and gas. Moreover, according to the fact that different program operators may have different rules to be satisfied, is the company looking for a specific approach for its environmental declaration? For example, the possibility to include more products within the same declaration may drive the choice, as well as the possibility to set the system boundaries of the investigating product to a limited scope. Finally, timing for performing the third-party verification, cost, and registration fees may also be considered when selecting the program operator. Okay, so having selected the program operator, it is now time to look at the rules, understanding how they must be satisfied when performing the assessment. Here you can see an example for the construction sectors with a sanitary ceramic product. HIBU adopts a two-level product category rules. Part E, covering the overall approach for the construction sectors, providing a set of rules based on the reference standards EN 15804, and Part B that covers specifically the product object of the declaration, adding some other additional rules to the sanitary ceramics. I would like to highlight you that this two-level approach is commonly adopted also by other program operators, just with, let me say, a different naming. For example, the International APD system adopts for the construction sectors a core PCR and a sub-PCR. So the name is different, but the approach is the same. Okay, question number 2. How I can perform the LC assessment? Considering the already existent reference standards of ISO 14040 and 14044, which are used by all the program operators, together with a specific set of rules given by the selected PCR. This stage is strategic and fundamental since the LCA study report is the background report, the background supporting report for the next development of the environmental declaration. According to the life cycle approach, the LCA report must contain all the typical elements required by the standard methodology. So goal and scope definition, life cycle inventory, impact assessment, and final interpretation. Here you have some information covering the goal and scope definition of the investigated product. So according to the PCR, here the declared unit was fixed at 1 ton of sanitary ceramic of an average product, which includes many different products, wash basin, toilets, and so on. Just to stress the concept, in this declaration, the product has not the typical form of that of the picture you may have in your bathrooms, just to tell you. Since the rules from the program operator specifically need to adopt 1 ton of average product. And even if this seems to be strange, adopting a unitary approach, thus 1 ton, 1 kilogram, 1 cubic meter, just to give you an example, is instead useful in terms of potential comparability among different manufacturers producing the same product. The system boundaries were also fixed according to the rules, having in this specific case the possibility to adopt a cradle-to-gate with optional approach. What does it mean? Okay. In this slide, you can understand from the flow chart that some of the life cycle stages here they are named with modules A1, A2, A3, which is the typical approach for the construction product, have been excluded from the calculation. In this case, specifically the distribution, the installation, and the use stage. On the contrary, all the other life cycle stages, like the upstream, covering raw material extraction and transportation, the core process for the production of the final products, and the downstream, covering the dismantling and waste treatments, have been included within the system boundaries. Having selected the system boundaries, and so the different materials and processes to be accounted for, the next step of the life cycle assessment is the making of the life cycle inventory. This can be performed, for example, using Excel forms organized according to the different life cycle stages, just to simplify as much as possible the data collection. An important step here to finalize the life cycle inventory is the validation, to confirm the accuracy and the consistency of the data and identifying any potential missing information that may be fixed with a sort of ad hoc integration of secondary data, using secondary data from the literature, for example, from scientific articles, handbooks, data sheets, and so on. Even if this seems to be a sort of a standalone stage, this is not true at all, since the inventory may be reviewed at any time during the study. Let me explain with an example. The company submitted all the inventory data, and everything was clear and apparently well supported by consistent evidences, like, for example, extrapolation from company management system and the ESG report. However, while running the impact assessment, we will see in the next slide, a strange result, highly divergent from the typical expected range values, was noted for the water indicator. Okay. Performing a deeper investigation, it was found that even if the water figures the water data were derived by the company from already verified by another third-party subject documents, the ESG report. They were totally wrong because of a wrong approach in considering the internal recirculating process. This demonstrates basically the importance of the data validation, particularly considering that a fault in this stage can lead to potential alteration of the results to be communicated. So the life cycle impact assessment, thanks to the environmental impact profile of the product object of the study, provide consistent information about the result of the study, giving the opportunity to identify strategic areas useful for the company for a potential improvement of the environmental performances. The selection of the impact categories, here you can see in the picture several columns according to many different environmental topics related to air, water, and soil, shall be done according to the specific rule of the program operator. And this is aimed at standardizing as much as possible the assessment, having the opportunity for a potential, let me say, comparison among different declarations. One of the main information we can derive, for example, is about the variability of the hotspot according to the different impact categories. And the results highlight that, for example, upstream and core processes covered by the A1 to A3 modules are those characterized by the most part of the environmental impact. But how we can specifically identify material and processes highly contributing to the final impacts? This can be done thanks to the life cycle contribution analysis, which allows mapping all the inventory flows involving the investigating product system. Here you have an example for just some of the selected impact categories, and the table shows you where are the hotspots, not with the general approach of the life cycle we have seen in the previous slide, but rather in terms of specific raw material and processes. So thanks to this heat map, we can state that the main hotspots are focused on few elements of the overall system: thermal energy and hazardous waste at the production plant level, the inbound logistic, and the fire clay, together with some other minor raw materials. This will help the company in focusing on more strategic topics for achieving a consistent improvement of the product environmental performances, avoiding in that way the implementation of, let me say, less effective project solutions. Question 3. How I can draft the environmental declaration? Similar to the LCA report, this is possible following the specific set of rules listed by in the selected PCR. In this case, the one provided by EBU. So, among all the different information, the declaration content covers general and product information, methodology and data inventory, and environmental impact assessment. These, for example, are some of the main information taken from the public available declaration. And they refer to, for example, the program operator, the number of registration, and the scope of the study, resuming all the most important information of the life cycle assessment. All this information must be listed according to the rules of the program operator. Moreover, I would like to highlight that EBU is probably the only one that doesn't allow for any change in the design of the environmental declaration. Thus, in this situation, in this case, thus marketing cannot damage too much the document. Okay, and so here you have some other typical information taken from the final declaration, derived from the LCA supporting report. And then here, following the lifecycle approach, you have all the lifecycle-based information, system boundaries, declared unit, and so on. This is necessary according to the editorial rules to communicate in a transparent way the approach adopted in performing the assessment, highlighting any potential limitation of the study. And even if the aim is again to allow a potential comparability of the impact results from different declarations, I recommend to pay attention in doing that, since differences in approaching the life cycle assessment, even if compliant with the rules, may generate high variation in the final impact results. For example, evaluating the presence of recycled content in the product, as well as the use of renewable electricity energy, especially for this sanitary ceramic product, which is highly impacted by the energy plant consumption, is fundamental to understand why the performances of a product could be better if compared to the others. Moreover, methodological aspect may also influence the comparability. For example, an update of the PCR from the program operator introducing a new version of the impact assessment can lead to the registration of new declaration based on different assessment method. Both are verified and so covered by the 5 years period of validity, but the results couldn't be comparable. This is a typical example. According to the LCA background report, so the information included in the declaration must be the same. So we can say that it is just sometimes a question of copy and paste. But I can tell you that many times I saw in the past that one of the major non-conformity was exactly that the environmental impact profile in the LCA report was totally different from that in the environmental declaration, even if this is not possible, of course. Question 4. How it is possible to proceed with the final registration of the environmental declaration? Through the third-party verification, which is characterized by the workflow here highlighted. The different steps require a different level of involvement by the parties, which are the company, so the owner of the environmental declaration, and the independent auditor who performs the verification. The aim of the audit is to assess the compliance of the submitted documents, including the LCA report and the declaration, with the criteria defined by the product category rules. During the verification, the documental analysis is followed by the data check of the data inventory and of the LDAC of the LCA model. This can be done by remote call and or on site. It depends on the rules of the program operator. After verify the consistency between the results obtained with the LCA model, confirming the absence of any residual nonconformities, the last step is the release of the company of the verification report, which is necessary for the final submission and registration of the environmental declaration. Just to give a raw estimation of the timing, the extension of the verification may be affected by many factors like the dimension of the product system with one or more plants, the number of products included in the declaration, and the complexity of the bill of material of the recipient. Anyway, the efforts for the verification are typically, let me say, in the range of some days, distributed over a time range of about 3 to 4 weeks, which are necessary for the exchange of comments, findings, and feedbacks between the company and the verifiers. And then, once the verification is closed and all the documents have been submitted, the program operator performs a last internal review to proceed with the final approval on the registration of the website on the website platform, which is accessible for free. So, keeping in mind that we have seen for the case study of the sanitary ceramic product under EBU, so keeping in mind what we have seen, for the sanitary ceramic product, here you have a very simplified additional example for the application to the PEP Eco Passport program operator. Here the focus is on electric and electronic devices. Here the example is of a UPS providing a backup power and protecting equipment from damage in case of a grid power failure. As previously stated, the PEP adopts the same two levels approach of EBU. So here you have a generic PCR covering the overall approach for the electric and electronic sector, based on rules derived from a different standard from the construction sector. And in this case, you have the EN 50693 and the additional PSR, which are product-specific rules, similar to the PCR, so just with a different name, that cover specifically the product object of the declaration. The slides here summarize the main contents of the environmental declaration, again with the approach very similar to that we have seen for EBO, so including the main ICA-based information. Sorry, in this slide. Okay, so concluding. The increased awareness, let me say, on environmental sustainability has led to a growing diffusion of labels and claims by companies aimed at communicating the environmental information of their products and services. The huge amount, the huge number of labels introduced by the companies on the market, often without satisfying the principles of transparency and accuracy, has introduced the risk of greenwashing, which is now under the radar of consumers, investors, and governments. To tackle this issue, the European Union has adopted a roadmap for environmental communication, aimed at supporting the organization with specific guidelines and regulation in performing an environmental communication credible and legally compliant. Avoid misleading environmental communication, thus basically the greenwashing, has been recognized as strategic, very strategic by the European Union for the proper ecological transitions, reducing that way the loss of trust among stakeholders. Environmental labels based on well-known and internationally accepted standards can help the communication of verifiable and transparent environmental information, and at the same time the possibility to communicate eco-design solutions and strategies for the improvement of the environmental performance of product and service with a life cycle perspective. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So first of all, just to, I saw some general question. After the webinars, every one of you will receive the presentation that we show, and also a link to a registration of the webinar, so you can see again by 90 days what we said today. And of course, as well, every one of you can book an online Teams meeting with our expert. Regarding the question, I can show you. Okay, Matteo, here.
Okay.
You can see.
So give me 1 second. Okay. Are available some standard templates for type 2 labeling? No, basically no. I would say no, apart from, let me say, specific programs from third-party bodies like TUSUD or some other you know quite well, that may sometimes provide a sort of standardized approach with forms to be filled, but this is up to this is demanded to the specific situation. So, according to my knowledge, no. Can in type 2 declaration individual parameters like PCF can be declared? One of the topic covered by the type 2 declaration is so by the 14021. Among all, one of them about the carbon footprint. So if you are asking if you can cover in some way the carbon footprint topic, yes. So there's a section addressing the claims relating to greenhouse gas emissions. Okay. APDs are costly and takes a lot of efforts to prepare. It depends. Yes, basically, I will say, okay, it is not so cheap, okay, but it depends. It depends on the selected program operator, the technical support, internally, externally, and so on. The registration fees, they may range. I agree. You may have different fee to pay for the registration, for the maintenance within the database of the program operator. So it depends which is which is the meaning of costly. Yes, effort in terms of time, because you have to perform a life cycle assessment, you have to draft an APD declaration. So yes, probably is a high consumer of in terms of times and cost. Probably yes. Okay. To which type of products? Typically, okay, for example, type 1 eco-label, detergents, okay, cleanings products, paper, like toilet papers. Probably you have seen some example. If I remember well, just to tell you, a company, Italian company, if I remember well, Lucart is covered by the eco-label, just to give you an example. And you have even cleaning services, catering, if I remember well, probably. And the product categories is time by time expanding during the years. So good morning. Good morning. So thank you for the information. You're welcome. Thank you to take part to the webinar. So how to proceed with the voluntary environmental label when there are no... Okay, this is a good question. You may have two different levels. The one based on, okay, there's a core PCR, a main PCR, the general one, which cover your product, but there's no the sub, let me say, the additional sub PCR or complementary PCR. It depends on the program operator. For some program operators, you can apply for the general one. For example, the international APD system, greater than PEPECO passport, no problem. For some other, like IBU, if you don't have the specific part B for your specific product, supposing it is for construction product, of course, because IBU is focused on just on the construction products, you have to propose your PCR. So you can promote the development, you as a company, of a PCR. But this is true, even true for the development of the new PCR for the other program operators, in case you may have not the core PCR. So you can propose the company for the development of the PCR. It is a quite long process, let me say. I'm reading. Do you think that these labels will become mandatory for electric and electronic products in the near future? I'm not a wizard, but let me say very likely. I think that here the important thing is to think in terms of the trend. Okay, even if compulsory, not compulsory, I know that the minimum legal requirements have to be satisfied. So if compulsory, better. But in this case, we are talking about voluntary declaration, voluntary evaluation, assessment, and so on. But I think that we have a situation very similar to, for example, the management system, like the quality one, the environmental management system, which are not basically compulsory, but almost all the companies all around the world, many of them have implemented this kind of standards, and I think that it's just a question of time. So, and you can see from the European Green Deal and from the roadmap that even this voluntary assessment, voluntary standards are starting to be included within the regulation. So I think it will be better to try to think on that standards, understanding how we can move on. The 14, just to be very honest, the ISO 14025 is the specific ISO standard providing requirements for the type 3 environmental label, so the environmental declaration. Okay, the 14026 is the one for the footprinting communication, which specify the rules that an organization, even a company, if decide to go for this standard, has to satisfy to be able drafting footprinting communication. It was born, if I remember well, when the old ISO TS, the old standard, the old version of the carbon footprint standard was converted in the finalized ISO, not an ISO TS, but an ISO standard, and the external communication requirements included in the ISO TS was removed, and they were moved basically into the 14026, just to give you an example. Okay, so directive come into force. If I remember well, okay, it is a progressive approach, let me say. For example, next year, we will have the first deadline for the battery regulation for the battery products, and so for the digital product passport for that kind of products. And after this first deadline, we will have probably time by time a promotion of new deadlines with new product categories involved in the directive, according to different product categories like construction, chemicals, textiles, and so on. To be honest, I don't know exactly the hierarchy which will be adopted by the European community, by the European Union. So we will stay tuned on the evolution. My company, a technical request, I like it. My company buys steel coils, rolling and cutting them to produce solid coils or rectangular shaped pieces. Which could be the most suitable? Okay. I don't know. I mean, we have to perform a check, understanding if there are some new PCR. If okay, what I can tell you for sure, you have not to check the Pepeco passport one, because it's out of scope, but probably it may be eligible for construction products, probably, yes, but probably the international PD system has a specific PCR for that kind of products, if I remember well. So you can easily understand, because all the information I'm telling you are available for free. The PCR are public available, like the registered APDs. You can check according to the CPC code, the the international product classification code. So according to the CPC code, you can check if your product is eligible or not for a specific PCR.
Okay, just
Okay,
last two
okay.
questions.
How does bio-based carbon content claims
Sorry.
Use in LCA and environmental labeling? Is used probably is used. How? It depends. It depends. So if we are talking about LCA approach, we have to stay focused on specific approaches like avoiding the mass balance, for example, typically of other different schemes, which is not acceptable for the LCA and the APD. And you have to properly consider the input and output flows related to the bio-based material to perform the right balance in considering the remotion, for example, from the atmosphere of the biogenic carbon. For example, it is a question of mass balance, let me say, according to the inventory flows. And is a question of applying the right characterization factors in terms of positive or negative values. Okay?
The last one?
The last one. Thank you. You're welcome. My question is, can the discussion of eco-label and manufacturing be linked to remanufacturing? Probably yes. I think yes, but
Okay.
again, it's a question of system boundaries. Probably, I don't know if you are meaning in terms of approach to the remanufacturing, like a sort of cradle to cradle, let me say, where materials are reused. But please, if you can provide some other information, I will reply even by email if possible, no problem.
Yes.
Later, since we are out of time.
Okay,
and that's all.
That's all. Of course.
Thank you, guys. I'm back on the scene for thank you for being here, the attendees, and thank you, speaker, for the knowledge you shared with us. We hope we answered all your questions. If not, please, you can write our experts directly so they can answer or give you an appointment for a better exchange of opinion and so on. So thank you again. We have to close now. Have a good day ahead. And see you next.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.